Welcome back to NUICfootball.com. I am your host, Kyle Kampmeyer. Last week, we saw number one ranked Amboy shock the state with a 74-22 win over Ridgewood for the I-8FA state title. This marks the third time an NUIC represented school has won the I-8FA state title since 2019. It is Amboy's first state title since 1984 and put the exclamation point as the most dominating team in the early history of I-8FA. I'll get final stats posted this week as there is a lot to talk about with the Clippers and their place in history. Congratulations to Amboy on your 2023 I-8FA state championship. Leamon Winslow survived a scare with Hope Academy in the semifinals, watching a 16-7 lead evaporate into a 21-16 halftime deficit. That would later turn into a 28-16 third quarter deficit that the Panthers would chip away at to take a 30-28 lead with just over 10 minutes left in the game. They would hold on to victory with an interception at the 3-yard line with 52 seconds left in the game to seal their spot in the state championship game for the fourth consecutive season. Leamon becomes the first Class 1A school in IHSA history to reach the state championship game 4 times. Since the inception of the 8-class system, a Class 1A team has never returned to state and won the title after being runner-up the year prior. CPC has that opportunity to change history if they can come away with the win Friday at Hancock Stadium. The last team with this opportunity was Tuscola in 2011 after they fell to Leamon Winslow in the 2010 championship game. They returned to state in 2011 but lost to Leamon Winslow's rival Dakota in the state championship game. This game also marks the first time in Class 1A history to have back-to-back state championship games featuring the same teams. We have seen similar teams match up in years past, but never in back-to-back years in Class 1A. So there's a lot to talk about and break down in this game, and we'll hit that next.
This NUICfootball.com production is powered by Lemon's Ambulance Service in Lena, Illinois. We always plan for the expected, but sometimes we need to plan for the unexpected. Lemons has been serving Stevenson and Joe Daviess counties since 1869. Call someone you can trust in your time of need. Call Lemon's Ambulance Service. Rose Bowman and the Choice Realty team understand that buying or selling real estate is among the most important financial transactions of your life. They are dedicated to providing personal and thorough service with a sharp focus on their clients' needs. Their licensed staff looks forward to assisting you in any of the following areas: residential, condominiums, new construction, land, farms, commercial, investment, or leasing. Choice Realty is locally owned and operated with offices in Freeport, Galena, and the Galena Territories. So when it's time to buy or sell, give Rose Bowman a call at 630-697-2480.
When we hit Hancock Stadium on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, one thing will be for certain. We'll have a state champion crowned, and history will be made in Class 1A, whoever is the state champ. Leamon Winslow enters this game with a perfect 13-0 record after they beat Chicago Hope Academy 30-28 last week, and Camp Point Central also enters with a matching 13-0 record as they beat their conference cross-rival Greenfield Northwestern 54-20 to advance to the state championship game. It is the third time in 5 seasons that CPC finds himself at the state championship game, while Leamon Winslow is making their 4th consecutive trip and 7th trip overall since 2010. When you take a look at how these two teams compare, there's a lot of similarities as well. You take a look at their scoring averages. Leamon Winslow is averaging 44.9 points per game, while Camp Point Central is averaging 47.6 points per game. You take a look at how their defenses are. Leamon Winslow is allowing 10.2 points per game, while Camp Point Central is allowing 9 points per game. Then you take a look at how each team is performing in the regular season, and you can just see the dominating wins each of them have put together. For Camp Point Central, you're taking a look at runaway games in a lot of them as they have shut out their opponents on 4 different occasions. They've put up running clocks in numerous games, and their closest game of the season came to another conference cross-rival opponent in Calhoun back in week 2 when they won 30-22. They had to beat Calhoun again in round 2 of the playoffs, where they won that one 32-14, and that game was closer than what the final score indicated, but Camp Point Central was able to pull away. Probably the biggest game that everybody's talked about for CPC is that round 3 win, the quarterfinal win over Althoff Catholic, 42-22. That was a game in which they got out to a 30-0 lead in the first half. And they've been able to do that with some big special teams plays, a blocked punt, a forced fumble on a kickoff return, an onside kick that was recovered. And they continue to make big plays after big plays as these playoffs continue to move on. Even last week in the semifinal game against Greenfield Northwestern, a game that many thought would be a closer contest, the Panthers were able to get up to a 32-0 lead in that game, basically making that game over before it ever hit halftime. Lena Winslow, on the other hand, has been just as dominant. As we take a look at their schedule, they too have pitched 4 shutouts on the season and have won multiple games by running clock as well. When you take a look at their biggest opponents, they took down Forston in what has become really a big rivalry between these two schools since 2010. They beat them 46-14, putting up a running clock for just the second time in the rivalry's history. They took another game with Anawan Wethersfield, a team that many thought would be very competitive and able to compete with Lena Winslow with their physical run game, and Lena Winslow shut them down 30-0. The most dynamic team that Lena Winslow has faced this season came just this past week in the semifinals when they did play Chicago Hope. They had a big-time quarterback with some elite-level receivers that were able to burn the Lena Winslow defense with relative ease. But the Panthers were able to make some adjustments in that game to allow themselves to stay in it, while at the same time they never panicked and they continued to chip away and playing their style of football. And to be honest, that's one of the biggest takeaways from that game that I see. That game really showed a lot about what Lena Winslow is and the character of their team. As they were able to fight back, they never panicked. They continued to do what they do, and that's play Lena Winslow football. Sure, they had to make some adjustments, but when it came crunch time, they came up with the big plays at the right time to seal their victory and move them into their 4th consecutive state championship game. This game's going to feature probably 2 of the best fullbacks we've seen in Class 1A this year. For Camp Point Central, that comes in the form of number 33, Elijah Genenbacher. Genenbacher has ran for 971 yards on 133 carries, and he's rushed for 25 touchdowns on the season while averaging 7 yards a carry. While those numbers don't jump off the chart at you, during the playoffs, he is close to 600 yards rushing in the 4 games that they've played. So a lot of his bulk and carries have come when the Panthers have needed him the most, and that is in the playoffs. He's going to be in the backfield with another wing back and big-time returner and number 3, Drew Paben. Paben was a big-time running back for the Panthers just a season ago and is their leading rusher again this year with 1,055 yards and 15 touchdowns, while he averages 11 yards a carry. So when you take a look at how these both these teams match up, you're going to look at both teams being very much run-dominated teams. Camp Point Central is going to run in a double wing offense, which we're accustomed to seeing. One of their returning running backs from last year is Connor Griffin, and this year he has relatively been underutilized as far as getting the ball, but at the same token, he's been very efficient in their run game, being a wing back that is one of the lead blockers in their style of offense that they play with that double wing. He has rushed for 351 yards and 6 touchdowns on the year. But with that said, the main playmakers for these guys are Genenbacher and Paben. At quarterback, you have the returning starter in Nick Moore. He's rushed for 209 yards on the season. He's also passed for 631 yards and 7 touchdowns on the season. And speaking of passing the ball, Camp Point Central is going to throw the ball a little bit. Their biggest target is Jack Thompson, the split end. He's caught 20 receptions for 481 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's about 6'4", big kid. Goes up, has great hands, can get the ball. Paben's also been able to catch the ball out of the backfield 10 times for 232 yards and has scored 1 touchdown on that. So it gives Lena Winslow some different options to look at that they have to be able to defend, as Camp Point Central is able to do multiple things in that offense. And, any style of wing style offense is always predicated on bootlegs, things like that can help you get receivers downhill while trying to pull linebackers in to create openings in the flats, and then on the out routes going down the field and slant routes or crossing routes coming across the middle. So while Camp Point Central is going to be more run heavy, you can definitely count on some opportunities that are going to exist with them in the passing game at some point in this one. We watched them last year in the game try to get a big third down pass play across the middle against Lena Winslow, and it was very close to being completed. It did not get completed. It did kind of change some of the outcome of the first half that started to put the game more in favor of Lena Winslow as well, as they were able to begin to move the ball, get some points on the board, and continue to force Camp Point Central to do things that were normally outside of the realm of what they wanted to do offensively. Special teams wise, Camp Point Central has been electric lately. They've been able to recover, I believe it's 4 onside kicks over the past couple weeks. So that's definitely an area of concern for Lena Winslow, as they're going to need to be prepared for that as well. Their kicker, Rodriguez, has been able to do some different things and has been able to showcase that he can put the ball wherever he needs to, whether it be onside kicks, the short pop fly kick that allows the Camp Point Central players to get downfield and either create a fumble, catch the ball in the air, something to that magnitude. Either way, it's definitely something that forces some teams to have to focus on different aspects that they don't normally focus on ahead of this game. So it gives them another advantage to help put another dynamic into this football game. For Lena Winslow, you're taking a look at Gage Dunker. Gage Dunker is to Lena Winslow what Genenbacher has been for Camp Point Central, and maybe a little bit more even so. He has rushed for 2,506 yards and 42 touchdowns on the season, averaging 8.5 yards a carry. He's carried the ball just shy of 300 times on the season as well. So there is definitely a lot of workload that goes into play when you're talking about Gage Dunker and this Lena Winslow Panther offense. He's joined in the backfield by halfback Coburn Lynch, who has also rushed for over 1,000 yards with 1,060 yards and 13 touchdowns on the season on 124 carries there. This Lena Winslow offense has been very dynamic this year. They have rushed for 5,015 yards on the season, which puts them into the top 11 rushing offenses all-time already in IHSA history ahead of this game. They have an opportunity to become the NUIC's all-time rushing team if they can get about 386 yards rushing on the ground against Camp Point Central. The record is held by 2012 Stockton, the team that lost in the state championship to Maroa Forsyth, as they rushed for 5,400 yards on the season. Other players to watch for the Panthers are going to be Nick Tippett and Lucas Fye. Between those two, they have combined for just shy of 900 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns. They will also share some time in the backfield and create havoc as well. One of the things that we have been able to see Lena Winslow do here recently is throw the ball, as Jake Schumacher has been able to complete 6 passes. Those 6 passes have gone for 3 touchdowns and 134 yards to just 1 interception. That interception did come just this past week against Chicago Hope, as he was able to throw 2 touchdown passes in that game, and his 1 incompletion was the interception that he threw. With that said, line play is going to be a big thing in this game. One of the things that we consistently talk about is how these two teams are going to match up. And one of the questions, I get asked a lot is, how does Lena Winslow continue to create quarterfinal and beyond programs year in and year out? And it's kind of funny because going back and listening to some recent interviews with both Coach Aaron and Coach Dixon, whether it be through the IHSA media calls on Monday or the interviews that Greg Armstrong from View from the West did with both coaches, this question was one that did pop up. And, it comes with consistency. You have 2 coaches that have been with their programs for well over 15 years. They have staff that have been in and around the program for just as long, if not longer. They have the ability to be at the school all the time. So they're constantly running into players that continue to see a football coaching member throughout the course of the day on a regular basis. On top of that, especially for Lena Winslow, you're talking about head coaches that are ingrained into every boys sport at Lena Winslow on the football coaching staff. And, taking a look at Camp Point Central, like Coach Dixon, he's also part of the track staff. Lena Winslow has that as well. Austin Rickles is the head coach of the track team, who's also part of the football team, does a lot of their sprint-based and recovery programs for Lena Winslow. You have Nick Werhane, who's the head baseball coach, is also the head JV coach for the football team. You have Kevin Milders, the head wrestling coach, who happens to be the defensive coordinator. Kyle Benson's the head basketball coach. He is the offensive coordinator. So it's all tied together. And I think with that constant awareness and the ability to stay together and keep people together, and then even when you take a look at some of the guys that have joined Lena Winslow staff, we're talking about former alumni who have come back to rejoin the program. It's something that they just do to keep everything within. So when you're talking about staff, you're talking about guys who have been there, that have helped create it and mold it into what it is today. And then some of their former players have come back to give back to the program as well. And it just continues to drive itself. Coach Aaron did make a point about it in his recent interview. It's one of those things where you never know what's going to happen. He's getting up there in age, sitting at just shy of 57 years old already. So, retirement years are coming up in his mindset, and how is it going to transition once him and some of the older members of his staff are moving on into the next stage of life. And while nobody wants to see that happen, we also have to be true to ourselves that at some point in time it's going to happen in the near future. And with that, what changes are going to be made to continue the sustainability and success of the program? On the other hand, for Camp Point Central, Coach Dixon's relatively still young in his career. While he's already been there for 13 seasons, he still has the ability to put up another 20 seasons or so if he wants to. And I would imagine that with his staff there, they could be able to do something long tenured to what we've seen Coach Aaron do with Lena Winslow, as he's in his 27th season already with the Lena Winslow Panthers. So, it's one of those things that's always interesting to see how those things work out. Another question that came up was, is Camp Point Central capable of following the blueprint that Chicago Hope had last week, despite it not being their forte? I think Camp Point Central cannot replicate what Chicago Hope did. They don't have the athletes and they don't have the game plan to do what Chicago Hope has done. But they do have different wrinkles that they've been able to put into their game plan that have worked against very good competition. They beat a very good Calhoun team in round 2. They pulled off what a lot of people across the state thought was a huge upset over Althoff Catholic. They've been able to absolutely dominate a Greenfield Northwestern team that they were down 12-0 in last year's quarterfinal game and were able to pull out the win 24-12. And it was a game of undefeated teams on opposite sides of the WIVC that a lot of people thought would be a very good game. And when you took a look at common opponents, common scores, all the numbers were there to say that it was going to be a close game. And Camp Point Central said, not so fast. We're going to dominate you. And they did that. They jumped out to a 32-0 lead and, basically made Greenfield Northwestern wave the white flag and say mercy before the running clock actually took place. But, there's a lot of things that both these teams are going to do offensively. How I see this game playing out is pretty simple, really. You're going to see two teams that are going to want to start fast. And they're going to have to be able to control the line of scrimmage early. They're going to have to limit mistakes, as both these teams don't have the foundation to necessarily overcome big mistakes, such as holding penalties, fumbles, things like that, because the other team is going to be capable of scoring and driving and making things hard as the game goes on. They're both very opportunistic defensive teams, fast to the ball, very disciplined, play gap responsibility style defense. You're not going to see these guys chasing each other around the field that create open cutback lanes. It's not going to happen. Very disciplined style defenses from both of these teams, and that is a very big focal point in this game. This could be one of those games that, I said on our podcast with View from the West with Greg and Mitch and Logan that, this is one of those games that we can see being a chess match in the first half of the game where, nobody wants to make the mistake. They're going to take care of the ball. They're going to gut out drives that are going to chew clock. And when you chew clock and you play ball control, you tend to have lower scoring games. With that, when you have lower scoring games, the ability to have errors becomes a lot less because you're not going to have as much time to bounce back from any mistakes or errors. You won't have those opportunities. So you have to be able to protect the ball. You have to limit your mistakes and penalties. And you have to be able to continue to sustain drives and chew up clock in your favor. Keep the other offense off the field. Sometimes a best defense is a good offense, so to speak. And, both these teams have the capability of doing that. Taking a look at the rushing totals for Camp Point Central, they sit at 3,940 yards of rushing offense on the season. And they've passed the ball for 814 yards on the season. So definitely you're going to see both teams being run like oriented teams, and yardage wise, both these teams have put up similar amounts of yardage, and taking a look at their scoring averages, they almost average the same amount. And like I said, defensively, both teams defensively have almost mirrored the exact same thing on the season. So, you know, there's things that both teams are going to have to take a look at. You heard Coach Dixon talk about it in one of his interviews, is that, you know, probably the best game film for them to look at is zero game film from this season, and just go back and look at last year's state championship game, where they have all the angles that they can look at from their own videos. They can look at the IHSA videos with all the replays to take a look and see where Lena Winslow really dominated the game at, and try to fix the things that they need to fix. You know, when you take a look at what Lena Winslow has returning from last season's team, they only have, really it's 3 starters, but it's 4 starting positions that they returned from last season, while Camp Point Central returns 12 starting positions. So the experience, as far as that concerned, definitely lies in favor of Camp Point Central in this game. But at the same token, when you take a look at, you know, the senior leadership, like Coach Aaron said, you have a lot of seniors that are starting for Lena Winslow that may not have been starters before, but they are able to do this on a year in and year out basis, where they allow their seniors the opportunity to earn the starting positions early in the season, and then it's up to them to keep those starting positions as the season goes on. And this year's Lena Winslow team has done just that. They have a lot of senior leadership, and it's not always the vocal type of leadership that you're used to seeing or talking about, but they have a lot of leadership by example on this team. And when you have that, you know, good things can come of it as well. And I imagine the same thing for Camp Point Central as well. You know, Coach Dixon does have some very good senior leaders in Gavin Blewett and Nick Moore and Drew Paben, Connor Griffin. So those guys are definitely guys, Jack Thompson, those guys are all guys that the younger guys look up to, because they've been here, they've done it. And I mean, we're talking about a team that has been in the state championship now 2 years in a row. We're talking about guys that have been 3-year starters as well. So they've been to the quarterfinals. They've been to state now twice. And that's something that they can definitely venture and lean in on. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. One of the funny things I saw was from 2008 state champion quarterback Kellen Phelps. He posed a question on one of the other Facebook page groups that I'm on, and he said if CPC loses or wins, if CPC wins on Friday, will I shed a tear? Well, in all honesty, I won't shed a tear if Lena Winslow loses. That might be for Carrie to do, but it won't be for me. However, you know, there is a lot of pride that we have covering the NUIC, and he goes, well, you are an NUIC purist, and I agree. Yes, I am an NUIC purist. I love to see our conference do well. I take a lot of pride in that. I grew up in this conference. I played in this conference. Obviously, I've been able to be there firsthand for a lot of historic events in this conference, like a lot of people. I mean, there's people older than me that have done even more than what I've done, but it's awesome to be able to carry that flag and keep moving it on, and seeing the teams do well, and being able to cover these teams, and seeing the success that we have year in, year out. And there is a great level of pride knowing that not only did you help build a team's program, or we're a part of a team's program, but you know that there's a lot of pride when you've played in the toughest conference in the state of Illinois when it comes to small school football. So you tend to gravitate to the fact that you want to see your conference members do well. And that's so that you can continue to say that you played in the toughest conference in the state, and it kind of validates you. I mean, we've seen some teams with losing records, beat other teams that have made the playoffs, and some of them making deeper runs in the playoffs. And we've watched our conference opponents beat those teams in non-conference games, and it speaks volumes for the level of competition that we get to see on a regular basis, even in years that we feel that may not be as strong as other years. When you see the end results of how far your teams go, then you realize just how good you have it. And, for both these teams coming out of conferences that have been to the state championship game, this is the 5th time the WIBC has been at state since 2014. And they, too, have a very good history of previous teams being at state with the Triopias and the Calhouns. We've seen Greenfield at state before, and now in recent years it's been Carrollton and Camp Point Central, and very similar to what we've seen with the NUIC. I mean, in recent years it's been Lena, Winslow, and Forston, and prior to that was the Dakotas and the Galenas. We've also seen Aquin and EPC have a turn as well, and of course we can't forget the Stocktons either of the NUIC. As they've been able to be in the state championship game 6 times as a program, but have come away with just 2 state championships. But in either case, they've been there, they've done that, they have the history behind them. So, yes, there is a lot of pride in that, and it's a lot of fun. How does this year's version of CPC stack up to last year's version? I think that if you go back and take a listen to our View from the West podcast, I think Logan does a great job of touching base on that. I know that question was also posed presented to Coach Dixon, both in his interview with Greg, along with the media coverage for Monday's interview sessions with the coaches. And, it's always hard to say that one team stacks up better or worse than another team. But what he does have is he has a lot of returning players, 12 of them, starters that return. He's not the biggest team that they've had size-wise, but he's definitely feels that this team is one of the fastest teams that they've had, and it's been one of the more opportunistic teams that they've had. And when you have a team that can play fast and play aggressive, size doesn't always matter. It's winning off the line of scrimmage, taking advantage in special teams, forcing mistakes upon your opponent, and then capitalizing on those mistakes. And while it all sounds cliche, in a game of this magnitude, between teams of these caliber of teams, and teams that are ball-controlled style teams as well, the cliches are exactly what they are. It's what these two teams need to do in order to come away with victory. So it's just, this is one of those games that's going to be a lot of fun. Being at Illinois State for the first time since 1998 is going to give this game a different feel. Obviously, Hancock Stadium has been updated and renovated since the last time IHSA has hosted the state title here. And with that, there's a lot of excitement around the state with the games coming back to Bloomington. So one of my biggest things, and I even mentioned this in the podcast, is that I feel that this game is going to be not just a big one. I think it could be one of the best games on Friday. So, for all of you football diehards that are watching around the state that don't pay attention to Class 1A football, but kind of tune into what we do here at NUIC football, tune into this game because you're going to want to see this game played. And like I said, whoever wins this game is going to be setting some kind of IHSA history on Friday when the game comes to a conclusion. So it'll be fun to see. If you like hard-hitting smash mouth football, this is definitely a game you're going to want to watch because both these teams are going to play a very physical and aggressive style type of run game football that is going to be exciting. I think you're going to see the same thing in the Class 2A game when Wilmington and Athens play each other as well. But, you're not going to want to miss this game. This definitely has the potential of being one of the best games. When you take a look at how these games or how these teams match up with each other, Lena Wenzel is going to enter this game as a 5-point favorite, and they're only projected to win by 3 points. Now, neither one of these teams kicks field goals or extra points. And while Camp Point Central has the potential of kicking a field goal, most likely with Rodriguez, they have not done that this year. So a 3-point win, I don't think, is going to be the margin of victory in this game. I think you're going to see this as an even number game by both teams. I put out there that I feel that Lena Winslow is the favorite in this game. I feel that with the line size and the ability to make things happen the way that they did last year, and knowing the game plan and scheming that CPC has, I do think that this game is going to be a close game. I still feel that Lena Winslow can win this game 36-28, and it may even be lower scoring than that yet because, like I said, you get 2 ball control offenses, anything can happen. I think the team that can get up by 2 scores ultimately will be the team that wins, because a 2-score lead in a game like this is a big lead when you're talking about 2 physical teams that keep the ball away. And on top of that, then you're going to force the team that's behind to potentially do things that might not be the norm for them as they become more desperate in what they want to do and try to win a state championship. So, that's one of the things that you can definitely see happening on Friday, because it's you have nothing left to lose. So whatever bag of tricks that you have, you're going to empty them all out just to try to make something happen and hope to the gods that something good happens and you're hoisting that state championship trophy at the end of the day. So you definitely don't want to miss this game. Like I said, if you can get to Bloomington, it's a relatively easy drive for most of the state to get there, as interstates from all over kind of lead right to the central part of where Bloomington's at. Tickets for the game are $15, and that will get you in for the whole day as well. So you really can't beat that either. $15, get 4 game access. Not saying you got to stay for all 4 games, but should be a great Friday for state championship football. And I know that we're definitely looking forward to another big game. And, for the sake of the NUIC, we're hoping that Lena Winslow can bring home another title. But, like I said, I would not be surprised if Camp Point Central comes out victorious in their 3rd attempt at a state title. This should be a very good game, very hard-hitting physical game, fast game. There's really not much more I can say about it. I'm very excited for this game, as I'm sure a lot of people are, taking a look at social media and how people are communicating about this game. There's a lot of guesses at what this game will be like, but the funny thing is that most of these guesses are all within a score or 2 of each other. And you see the differences. Some people are picking Camp Point Central. Some people are picking Lena Winslow. My pick to win this game is going to be Lena Winslow, not because I'm from the NUIC. I just feel that they are the favorite in this game. And at the same token, you're talking about the 3-time defending state champs, a team that's trying to go for their 7th state title. And, the run that Lena Winslow has been on since the 2017 season, it's one of those things where, you have to prove it to me that you can beat Lena Winslow. And until you do prove it to me, then I'm going to continue to pick Lena Winslow to win. So they are my pick to win the state championship game.
This portion of our broadcast is brought to you by Diedrich Epoxy Flooring. Serving Northern Illinois and Southern Wisconsin, Diedrich Epoxy is the source for all of your epoxy needs. Give Diedrich Epoxy Flooring a call today at 815-239-1158 for your free estimate.
That gives you a look at how I feel the state championship game will break down. Like I said, should be a great day on Friday to get out to a football game. If you can't get to the game, this game will be streamed on NFHS Network. It'll also be on some local media channels. Take a look at the listings. We do have them posted on our Facebook page in the featured section, so of our group page, that is. So if not, we'll continue to post how you can watch the game. Don't ask if they're on a certain TV provider, whether it's Dish Network, MediaCom, whatever. I don't know. Take a look at your local listings, see if your channels are on there, and go from there. I don't have Dish Network, so I couldn't tell you if it's on Dish Network. Quite honestly, I don't care. I'll be at the stadium. I'll be watching the game live. So, I really can't tell you what to do. You just got to figure out yourself based off of the information we provide you. That's all I can tell you. But anyway, have fun. Enjoy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. And as always, root for the NUIC.